Okay, it's recording. Okay, now it's recording. So, hello everyone. So my name is Dr. Khaled Alawadhi. I am a KU alumni, recently graduated COVID-19 batch in October 2020. I will giving to you a presentation on writing a medical CV with a question: is it that simple? So this is a question that we answered at the end of the presentation, and we'll start now. So as I said, so I had two bachelors, so Bachelor of Medical Sciences in Kuwait University and Bachelor of Medical Doctor, MD in October 2020. And I'm currently an intern at Mubarak Al Kabir Hospital in the Ministry of Health in the state of Kuwait. So I have no conflicts of interest. So what is a CV? So this is a question in everybody's mind. So what is a curriculum vitae? So, and from its translation, so it says curriculum vitae, it means course of life. So basically someone's own achievements. And it's really crucial and important to have in every medical student from day one in med school, you need to have your own CV. That is really crucial. I'll tell you why. So why is it the most important element in a medical career? So why are we doing this presentation, and why do we doing this presentation, or why should I talk about CV and spend 45 minutes talking about it? It's actually crucial for opportunities, especially if you want to apply to a residency program back in, So if you want to apply for a residency program in either in Kuwait, Canada, United States, UK, any region worldwide, even for fellowships, for ranking, let's say if you want to get promoted from assistant registrar to a registrar, and etc. And you want to keep an up-to-date record of your achievements. So from day one in med school, what are you doing for the last, for me at KU, we follow 7 years program. So what do you do for the last 7 years of your program? So why are you doing all of this? And you want to keep it as a record. You want to keep a record of your achievement for that. So an example, so in case of a residency interview, because before the interview, you need to do two things. For in Kuwait, just give me a second. Okay, so so an example of that, so in a residency interview, so prior to the residency interview, to get to that point, you need to do your exams. So say for Canada, you want to do an FCCQE Part 1. For the United States, you need to do USMLE Step 1 and Step 2 CK. Step 2 CS is no longer valid this year because of the COVID-19 situation, and the centers are required in the United States to apply for the exam. And then you need to do your CV, which is important, which is basically a summary. I need to do a very good CV, simple and straight to the point. And you want to make it very, like I said, straight to the point, and you want to make sure it shines through as the interview panel reviews this application prior to the interview to get you into that point of the interview. And for promotion, as I mentioned earlier, to get promoted. Master's of Fellowship interview. Let's say you want to do a master's in experimental surgery in Montreal. If you want to do surgery, a master's of surgery in, let's say for example in UK or in Saudi Arabia, for example, a position offer. Let's say you want to get applied to that specific hospital, like in private hospital or in the KOC or in the UK. You need to have certain experience, and you need to a CV as a major point. So this is a study done in Kuwait in 2013, done by two of my seniors, Dr. Yusuf Marwan. He's a fellow orthopedic surgeon in Canada, and our former dean, Professor Adil Ail. So they did a study called Selection Criteria for Residents of Residency Programs in Kuwait. It was published 2013 in the BMC Medical Education Journal. This study summarized the importance of how the interview performance works, and that's in Kuwait, of course. And interview performance worldwide, interview is number one. Then comes the GPA, GPA in Kuwait, because we score, part of our scoring system for the interview to be applied, to be accepted, is the GPA. It's one of the key points. And you want honors or med schools. But however, the important one is the interview, and some of the things are mentioned already there, the criteria. So it's actually critical, and you actually almost guarantees selecting the applicants. The GPA is not that, so some people say it's important, but actually when you look at it outside, it's not that actual important, because as you know, every country has its own GPA scoring system. We follow our success rate or pass rate has to be 60%. In the UK, I don't know, I think it's 40% or 50%, if I'm not mistaken. So also in Ireland, it's 40%. And the United States and Canada, it differs based on which region or which state. So it differs. Your electives plays a huge role in the selection of residency. So why I'm talking all of this? Because these things, some of them will be mentioned in the CV itself. It has to be shined through when you mention all these, and it has to be important. Okay. So to summarize what is a CV, I'm going to give you two examples. I'm a huge fan of football. I'm a Liverpool fan, back at a Premier League club in England. So in football, it has its own tactics. So it's 11 players with the tactics: defense, midfield, attack the attacks the legs, scoring goals, defend the field to prevent the opponent scoring goals. So the CV is almost like the team. You need to have the appropriate players to get accepted to that specific program, or to get to that, let's say, to get an excellent CV for that opportunity. And this is one of the crucial things that has to be there in the CV. So you need to have an appropriate team, and appropriate components, and appropriate input into the CV in order to shine through. Another example of that, a treehouse. So basically, as you know, treehouse, you need to have a good location, a good, let's say, you need a good treehouse. You need the equipment, hammers, nails, drilling. That's where I come in. I'm an Ortho fan. And the pieces of wood. Pieces of wood are, for me, the pieces of wood are part of the things that makes you shine through as an applicant. That's your own CV. So the CV has to shine through, which I show you here. So does it have to be structure specific? Yes, but not necessarily to apply to. I'll give you an example. So one of my colleagues, who actually I think he applied this year to the Kuwaiti board, the residency program, he has an excellent excellent CV, but the structures actually differs. It differs from the main some of the components. But however, the main structures are there. Why are there actually? So it's important to have the main components, but the inside can differ. It's up to you. It's like I said, you should have to show your own input, and you have to make sure your presentation shines through, and your own CV. So what should include mostly personal information. Not every CV has its own personal information. You don't want to give to the residency, or you want to give to the specific master a CV with no name on it. It's going to be embarrassing. Education, your degrees, your qualifications, including postgraduate training for, let's say, if you want to apply for fellowships, research, specialty training, electives, observerships, certifications. These are all in the education. Employment, like myself, I'm currently working at Mubarak Al Kabir Hospital as part of the internship here under the Ministry of Health in Kuwait. Your previous work experience, did you work prior as an intern? Let's say for a month you work in Starbucks, you worked in 1 month, let's say, in a community service field. So these things matters. Honors and Careers Award, researches, published ongoing projects, conferences, seminars, workshops, languages, extracurricular activity. So like this meme says, one does not simply write a perfect CV. It's the perfect CV is up to you to write it. But however, the main components has to be there. So what are my tips for a CV? Always have two CVs. Your master CV that you have to keep it for records, up to records, and CV for your application to apply for residency. For example, you have to tailor it for the position residency required. Let's say, for example, if you want to apply for any surgical specialty residency program, let's say in Kuwait or in Canada, let's say, for example, or in the United States or the UK. So you want to make sure it's very simplified, 2-3 pages. You want to make sure include all the things that related to surgery. However, not purely medical. You have to tailor it. And I'll speak more later, details later on. You have to structure it clear. As I said, so you see the main components I mentioned it, mention them, but make sure it's structured clearly. Always highlight your experience. So every experience, let's say you did an elective in that orthopedic surgery, let's say in McGill, or you did it in University of Toronto. Always mention a brief statement of that elective, of what did you do in that elective. Of that elective, you want to do that, do a brief set. Let's say, though, this is elective explains that I did do rounds with the fellow doctors involved in treatment of patient, attended OR rooms, attended ER area and see patient consultations, etc. You have to mention it. So the ideal way is to see the program or see the elective objectives. Don't make it a pure medical CV. Always list an outside interest. You don't want to have a pure medical CV. You need to show an outside interest. Let's say you're an artist. You say you are a photographer, or you say you're a YouTuber, or you say you are an Instagram influencer back in your country. These things will be ticked, and these things shows you how you are good at you are. They'll be interview. That's really good. CV. This guy is. We should get him in to interview. Address the gaps. So what do I mean address the gaps? So let's say, for example, from 2015 to 2017 or 18, you did do nothing. You have to address these gaps. Or let's say you did everything very well, but you're missing research, or you're missing a master's, or you're missing an activity it has involved in orthopedic surgery, or related to any surgical specialty, or medical, or pediatrics, or gynecology. Always mention it. So every specialty has its own goals. So make sure as an applicant, you have to see them through. And always in any CV, what they like the most: simple, neat, grammar. Always grammar is mentioned. The grammar has to be well checked. Check on a weekly basis. Pronunciation, punctuation. You have to make sure of that. You have to make sure the pronunciation according to which accent, US or UK, and all has to be stated the same. So a clear font, like we usually use Arial or Times New Roman, a font from 10 to 12 as an ideal font size, and make sure it's a chronological order, which I'll show you later on in one of the points. And update it at least once per week. So this is my tip. So what I do, I just recently published a study. Yesterday I announced on my account that this is one of my first publishing. So I'll talk about it later on. And always have copies on your computer and your external USB drive. Always have copies, even hard copies. You want to keep it in your desk, always have it. And recheck, always have a draft and recheck every time. And most important tip of all that, do not lie. Do not exaggerate. Do not fabricate any details. They will catch you. I'll give you an example. Let's say someone mentioned an outside interest that he sings or plays a guitar or played football, or let's say an artist. They'll ask you in an interview, okay, what type of art you're using? You're doing sketchy art on an iPad or on a paper. They'll ask specific details. Let's say you did that thing 8 years ago, and you just mentioned an outside interest with no updating on it. Or let's say you have contributed to a research, but you didn't do anything in the research, just put your name on the research. They'll ask you details about it. What's your contribution? What did you do for that, to that research to make that contribution is there? So they'll ask you specific questions regarding that. So make sure you do not fabricate anything, any detail in the CV. So let's get to it, to the part. So start first, the personal information. So what I do, I put a header with my name on it, Kirkham CV, and the date of the latest update. When I did that last update. This is my last update was end of February 2021, last week. And this is my address. So I put, what do I put usually? Put the house, the street, the house, the block, the street, then your country, the area, then the country, then the PO box if available. And then you put your phone number, and there's the email address. Ideally, the email address should be from the faculty, an academic email. But however, since I don't, because I just recently graduated, my emails have, our HSC emails has been deleted. So I use an email used for educational purposes, which is this email. And the personal information, add your gender, date of birth, place of birth, your nationality, marital status, single, married, etc. So this is basically, that's it. That's a personal information. And the education. So the education, we mentioned degrees, electives. You have to include everything in chronological order, and the internships and certification. I'll give you a detail. I'll give you an example. So degrees. So I'll give you an example now. So this is an education. So what I did was, there's an academic qualifications. So from September 2016 to October 2020, I was awarded the Doctor of Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, Kuwait University, Kuwait. Was awarded Bachelor of Medical Sciences, high school diploma with honors. You have to mention it. Electives, you have to mention that I did orthopedic surgery in Kingston General Hospital and Queen's University in Kuwait. In Canada, apologies. And then you did general surgery in Mubarak Al Kabir Hospital in Kuwait. You have to mention that the elective. You have to mention the elective, the hospital you were in, the university you were with, and the country you are in. You did the study with, and you mentioned in as I mentioned, state a brief statement of what the elective was about. What did you do exactly? So so my idea is check the weekly objectives of that elective on their website, and write it down. I write it down and summarize it. An observership is an observership. Let's say you did an observership. Observership is not a bad thing to take. It's a very good option to take. If you didn't have electives available, try an observership. For me, if at least if you can't do an elective, do an observership. If you couldn't do it at a specific university, if you're planning to, at least an observership. I know the observership is, you cannot involve directly with the patient's management, but you can learn more about that specialty and enhance yourself onto getting to that specialty or that residency program to learn it more. Internships is something not related to medical school. So in Dasman Diabetes Institute, they have these internship programs that we did back when I was 4th year. So we did a student ambassador internship program in Kuwait. So it was, I think, 2 months. Certifications, ACLS. Recently, I just finished my ATLS program for a surgical specialty or emergency medicine. Basic life support, ACLS, diabetic foot management, airway, etc. You mentioned it all. And if you just recently been in med school, what I suggest always to mention the date that you are receiving you started that year for the certificate, then write present, that you're still undergoing the requirements for the Doctor of Medicine certification. That applies for us at Kuwait universities, because we have two programs, the preclinical and the clinical programs. Now, the employment and work experience. So the work experience is an internship year in Mubarak Al Kabir Hospital in Ministry of Health, Kuwait. So I always mention it: internship year, MKH, Ministry of Health, or the internship year, hospital, MOH, Kuwait. And you mentioned for how long the duration you have been working on. Or let's say you are an assistant registrar in a specific specialty. Mention you are an assistant registrar at that specific hospital, and for the Ministry of Health and Kuwait. And you write present. If you're still an assistant, you just write for a present. Or let's say you had an experience, let's say these are examples. So let's say you are part of summer intern in Lodan for Kuwait 2012, or summer intern in Ahli Bank of Kuwait for a month or 2 months. You have to mention this one. What did you do specifically? Like I said, you have to mention in a brief statement, what did you do exactly? Okay. Honors and career awards. So awards like accolades on medical field. What have you won for them? Let's say awards. You have won a research poster competition poster winner in a conference. In a conference, let's say HSC conference or 34th HSC conference, and the poster for what's winning for the undergraduate award poster, or as a clinical year or clinical experience poster. That we do it annually. Or let's say, for example, you want the poster for the best lab research. For example, academic distinction, certificate of excellence awarded by by KuMSA, Kuwait Medical Students Association, Faculty of Medicine, Kuwait University, or let's say in the UK, on Canada, on the United States, etc. Now the research. Now this is the research. Now this is important. So how do you name it, the research? So research, you mention the year of when did you start the study, and you write the name of the study itself. So let's say name of the study itself. Let's say adult spinal deformity and frailty, systematic, two dots, a systematic review. Then you write under which department this study is doing, under the Department for Orthopedic Surgery, let's say McGill at the Faculty of Medicine, McGill University, Kuwait. And what's your role in it? You are the first author, second author, co-author, contributor. You have to mention this. And who's your mentor? And if you published it, you mention next to the university, published in a Global Spine Journal, 2020 and March 2021. You have to mention this. Now, other research experience. Now, this is if you are worked as a contributor. You have contributed. Let's say you contribute to data collection, or you contributed to, let's say, statistical analysis. You have contributed, but you're not an author in it. So you have to add to it. Then I mean, you have contributed. That doesn't mean you're an author, but still, that's considered a research experience. You have to add to it. If you present this research in the poster or presentation, mention it. They love it, because someday let's say one of the attendees of that conference was actually one of the guys. He was in the interview panel. They say, "Oh yeah, I saw your study in that conference in 2019," and he will ask you about it, and he'll ask you to talk about it in brief. And he already knows about the study itself. So the research. So these are examples of mine. So our research, ongoing research. So I'm doing PASS, Prospective Multicenter Randomized Controlled Trial in Kuwait, and adult spinal deformity. Thankfully, we published this study 2 days back. We got an email from the journal that that study has been published and accepted. Just waiting for the full publication in the journal online within the next 2 weeks. And these are my complete research. So I did, let's say, for example, effects of pregnancy of weight loss on post-bariatric patient. You did a presentation in KRRC, part of KuMSA in Kuwait, doing the Kuwait Association of Surgeons second conference, so Safe Surgery conference, or presentation, which is basically they'll ask you to present the study in front of an audience in a specific and allocated time about that study. And let's say you did a study on a community medicine study, it helps a lot. Every research you have done related to the specialty that you want to get in, mention it, but do not mention any study or random topics. Let's say, for example, you did, let's say, 10 studies, you are planning to apply for general surgery. You don't want to apply, you want to add medical specialties, medical or internal medicine researchers in your research experience. Mention them, but it will show the doctors that you're okay. And unintentionally, you have. I think you are mixed up or unclear. You have an unclear mind of choosing which specialty you want to go in. You have to mention. You have to be careful about that. Okay, and then I think the next one, yeah, and then the project. So let's say Dalia now currently she's a presenter or the host of the presentation. These things you have to mention them. Let's say she's now the presenter. She can write in the CV that I was the host of that specific host of that workshop. She can mention I've hosted this workshop talking about and or let's say for myself, I hosted that the workshop talking about CV and how do you write CV, including writing tips, etc. And you have been the presenter, you can talk about it. Let's say an appointment elected at let's say the organizing committee, humanitarian volunteering activities. If you travel for a volunteer activity, let's say in Africa, in Asia, Nepal, India, in Africa, any of these volunteering activities, Jordan, Syria, you have to mention it. These things because these guys they love and we love humanitarian access. It's part of our career as we are doctors. We are humanitarian. We are doing humanitarian actions. We want to save lives after all, as physicians. And public health activities. If you have involved in an activity, mention it. Let's say, for example, you have involved in Teddy Bear Teddy Bear Hospital, which is basically an activity. It's to helping helping children. Sorry, my apologies. Helping children to show them that the doctors are not scary, are not here to hurt them. We want to make their life as much as happy as possible, and make sure their illnesses are better. Let's say if you want to go, I organize an annual Kuwait National Day celebration, Down syndrome, any activity, even in the UK, mention it. Even if it's an online course for humanitarian activity, mention it. You're part of an organization, mention it. You have starting a career, let's say in fitness, mention it. If you did anything that you did an outside curricular activity, mention it. As these are for part of the public health. As long as part of public health, and as long as volunteering or humanitarian actions and aiming at something that you did, fitness classes aim at showing the people for breast cancer awareness as an example of that. Another thing, academic activities. Let's say, for example, you are an OSCE tutor, or let's say clinical educator. You did YouTube videos on orthopedic surgery. Mention it. I did a YouTube series on orthopedic clinical examination for our Kuwait University medical students. These are very crucial, important elements to teach medical students. As us orthopedic surgeons, a little bit unknown, or let's say unclear, the steps of the orthopedic surgery in worldwide and even in Kuwait. We don't have a specific structure for it. So I did these videos, which is standardized based on our university. And every faculty has its own guidelines. So mention it. If you did a video series, you did courses on anything. You're part of an AO trauma team, let's say, for example, which is an organization for orthopedics and trauma. Or let's say you're part of American College of Surgeons, and as a student member involved in, let's say, in academic activities, or you did summaries. Even if you did workshops and summaries, mention it. That you did summaries related to MSK trauma. And you're now part of a KuMSA member. Let's say you're a member of the active delegate of the SCOMI, or let's say for media committee. Mention it. You did, yeah, you did let's say residency training in Canada workshop. Why and how? So these are examples, and anything you can mention it. These are other examples. These are one of my colleagues' own CV. So humanitarian volunteer work. Back in Kuwait, we did something called CAMA, was COVID-19 Assessment Management Area Team. That was at the peak of the cases. We did an example of that. Academic activities. You're an English tutor, let's say for KuMSA for certain years. You have been elected, leadership roles. You have to mention these. Now, conferences, seminars. Now, the conferences, what was the title? When was it? The timing? Which year? Which month? What was your attendee, organizer, speaker, exhibitor? Mention these, and also if you did present the poster, you can present these posters with the research tab, or you can mention it in the conference. It's up to you. And the workshops that you're involved in, let's say CV writing. Did you see this? The one I did, I can involve in the workshop section, the CV. Okay, and the extracurricular activities of, let's say, languages or interests. So let's say, what are the languages you're fluent at? Let's say of course, all of us are fluent in English and Arabic. If you have an outside language interest, let's say Japanese or French, mention it. But mention if you're good, weak, or fluent. You don't want to write a language that you don't know. Then it'll be asking that you. Let's say in Canada, let's say Montreal, in a French prominent state, you wrote fluent French. Then the interview will be turned into a French interview, and you'll be in trouble. So always be truthful to your CV. An interest, let's say public health, volunteering, leadership. I have an outside interest. I used to do digital drawing on iPad. Currently, even now, I do a digital drawing on iPad. This is my account on Instagram. Traveling, reading, football. I'm interested in football, and I play football from time to time. I'm interested in football tactics, watch games. I even critique the club sometimes. So these things actually, these are the outside activities. They want to see you not just as a doctor, as a human being. This is how a CV should be: simple, and it should be well to the point, and it should show you on that paper. So is it that simple? Yes. If you start from now and you start update it on a weekly basis, it is that simple. Okay, this once you started, it's confusing, but once you start with it with time, you're gonna get used to it. Okay, I can check the draft, I can check again and again, weekly basis. So in summary, always have two CVs: a master CV, a CV for the appropriate opportunity, whether it's a residency, fellowships, or let's say a master's opportunity. Know your CV very well, memorize it. Always memorize your own CV, every single detail, even research. If what research you did at that topic and you publish it, you have to look at research related to it. Do not fabricate, do not lie, always be truthful, always have a mentor for your career choice. This is my top advice with that from that presentation. Ensure that mentor review your CV and address the changes. Always have a mentor related to the specialty you're planning to, or not necessarily. So one of my mentors was Dr. Mohammed Swaydan. He's currently a psychiatrist in Kuwait. And one of the other two of my colleagues, Dr. Ali Al-Sayegh, Dr. Hussein Al-Ali. These guys helped me choose the specialty that I want for the future. And those guys helped me review my own CV and update it on a weekly basis. And these are my references. I'd like to thank you, my colleague, Dr. Yusuf Marwan, Hassan Kanani, Dr. Ali Sayegh, Dr. Fatma Rahal, Dr. Yasmin Alawa, Dr. Mohammed Swaydan. These are research articles. One of them is related to the residency in Kuwait part, the slides, and others are involved in the how do you prepare your own CV. And I suggest you to read them. And so my final advice: start from now and always update on a weekly basis. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you KuMSA UK for the opportunity. And I had just finished my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them now. Thank you.
So for any of you that have any questions, please feel free to write it in the chat box now, or to unmute yourself and ask a question.
الله يعافيك، حياك الله.
السلام عليكم.
عليك السلام ورحمة الله. كيف حالك؟
I have a question regarding the master's degree. I mean, you mentioned, I mean, I know it's not related to the CV part as per se, but generally speaking, I've asked a lot and I've spoken to a lot of doctors about doing a master's after medical school. And for some reason, I mean, I think it's really useful. I think there's a lot you can learn from doing a master's, but for some reason, it seems frowned upon amongst consultants. It's like it's not something that's very important. So I just wanted to know about your thoughts regarding doing a master's degree in general.
شوف الماسترز انا كنت ميكانيك، قالوا لي عنه وانا كنت بالالكتيف في كندا. اذكر واحد دكتور الحين حاليا هو R2 ريزيدنت ماك ماستر في الريزيدنسي، قال لي اياها، قال لي احنا بين هو يفضل يكون عندك ماسترز اذا الناس ماست، لكن يفضل يكون عندك، يعني هي واحده من البلسز اللي يحبونها هم، بس not a must 100%. يعني عندنا ايش كثر ربعنا الحين دكاتره حاليا currently we're having our just the same degrees as mine, MD and Bachelor of Medical Sciences, and they applied the CAM. They are now currently residents in the program. So it's up to your CV. If you're master's بالاخير, it helps you for academic career, even if they're planning to as an academic career, or you want to do more researches regarding to that topic as an outside interest. Or let's say let's say you want to do researches in Dasman, or you want to do say researches for specific under an umbrella of a committee. Let's say AO trauma. We follow AO trauma if orthopedics usually. That's in Davos, Switzerland. Or psychot.
طيب دكتور، في ناس يعني اذا بخصوص الريسيرشز، في دكاتره ردوا علي بهالرد، قالوا ان الريسيرش تقدر تسويه بالريزدنسي. ليش اخذ سنه واضيع سنه من عمري او اتاخر عشان اخذ الماستر؟
شوف انا اقول لك شغله، الحين احنا يمكن الاورثو حقنا انا for me I did the research from now، لان I wanted to يعني شوي get involved in research from early on so I can don't waste my time later on in residency. I get confused to everything. But some programs actually require you to get experience. Some of them require you to do research. يعني get yourself involved from day zero. يعني نفس الريسيرشات اللي سبيشالتيز اللي صعب انك تدخلها اصلا، اللي مثل بلاستكس، ثالمو، فانا ما خاب ظني ENT، بس ENT is not the must I think to do research، بس some people like to do research. صحيح هو research is not a must requirement but we like احنا كدكاتره يفضل يكون عندك ريسيرش مسوي على الاقل at least one in orthopedic، حتى لو مسوي كيس ريبورت ما هي مشكله. يعني
وبخصوص تفضل.
كمل.
بخصوص الريسيرشات، يعني طبعا هو حبذا لو يكون الريسيرش بالتخصص اللي انت تبيه، لكن واقعيا يعني كطالب طب في صعوبة في إيجاد الريسيرشات بالتخصصات اللي أنت تبيها، خاصة يعني الريسيرشات اللي تكون بسبيشالتيز، يعني أوف الأورثو ENT شوي يعني يمكن يعتبرون سبيشالايزد، وذا جود ريسيرشز مرات ما يكونون افيلبل، ويعني طبعا كل واحد ظروفه وحسب الأوقات اللي هو فيها. لو الحين الواحد عنده ريسيرشات خارج التخصص اللي هو يبيه، هل هذا شيء مضر يعني حيل، ولا انه له يعني في اسباب، مثلا انا بتعلم ريسيرش ابي اكون انفولد، هذا يعني، ولا انه شيء سيء ولا تقول لهم عليه؟
شوف انا اقول لك شغله، الريسيرش اللي قصدك انت سيرجيكال ولا ميديكال؟ يعني افترض انت ناوي على سيرجيكال سبيشالتي، اذا مسوي ريسيرش او
خلينا نقول انه سيرجيكال،
اوكي اذا سيرجيكال ممكن، بس ما يكون شغله قريب عليها، يعني يعني سي اورثو يكون يفضل اي شيء، يعني حتى لو مسوي ستدي شوي له علاقه بالاورثو اللي البيت، شوي جنرال مع مسكل سكليتا شوي. الحين ناو صار ترند الحين كوفيد ريسيرشز which can be done. تقدر تسوي كوفيد، تقدر تسوي سيستماتيك ريفيو على استديات. الحين كوفيد تقدر get involved as a cross section studies. what do you think the most common؟ الحين اعطيك مثال study. الحين انا شغال على study gangrene in relation to COVID in ICU patients. This is actual general surgery and this is actually general surgery, orthopedics, critical care. It's ثلاثة كانوا involved in 3 specialties. تقدر الريسيرش نفسه تقدر تدخله باكثر بجانب if that research involved يعني more than one study. for me تقدر تدخل surgical yes، بس انا ما افضل. يعني اعطيك مثال، عندنا في بعض الزملاء يكون مسوي وايد ريسيرشات، مسوي وايد هو كميديكال، هو ريسيرش يحب يسوي ريسيرشات او she likes to do researches، لكن ريسيرشاته is lost شوي radiology، شوي medical، شوي surgical، شوي gynae، شوي peds. يعني it's not well. يعني اوكي يبين لك انه he's a very good researcher، بس بس انت لما تتقدم حيصير فيك انت ليش مسوي هالريسيرشات كلها ال 20 ريسيرش؟ ليش مسوي انت وايد ريسيرشات انت؟ و something not related to us. هاي شوي يعني انت يمكن انت ما تلاحظ هالشغله حقك، بس كان بي positive كان بي negative. So my advice always do any surgical. حط السيرجيكال بس لا تحط شغله بعيده عن السبيشالتي اللي تبيها انت. عرفت؟
تمام. الله يعطيك العافيه.
الله يعافيك، حياك الله. بس خليني ارد كان في سؤال من الاخت آمنة. اخت آمنة، السؤال متى المفروض ابلش بعد التخرج السي في او حتى وانا طالبه؟ start from now as early as possible. يمكن انا واحده من الله يذكرها بالخير دكتوره ياسمين عليوه، هي اكبر مني بسنتين. هي she's one of the students that actually helped me to build my own CV when I was third year medical student of a 7-year program. But actually helped me from as a young age to do the CV. And trust me, when you do it early تقدر بعدين تعرف انت شنو الجابس تبي تصلحهم بعدين، تقدر تسوي الجابس even later on. والله اذا بحط اليو اس فاميلي سكورينج، ولا ابي احط لي الكنديان سكورينج ام سي سي كيو اي بارت 1 بحط السكور ماله، وهذا مسوي الام ار سي. طبعا الام ار سي ام ار سي اس هذول مو حقنا، حق الجراجويتس اللي جراجويتس و gain experience in that specialty for example الى اخره يعني. ف always start early always update on a daily weekly basis.
يعطيك العافية دكتور.
الله يعافيك، حياك الله.
بس سؤال ما عليه كاميرا يعني.
تفضل.
الأمانة أول شيء استفدت، يعطيك العافية ما قصرت.
الله.
بس يعني في جانب أنا يعني توني انتبهت له، يعني الأشياء مثل ما قلت أنت بلشت من year 3. طبعا أنا آخر سنة بس ما كنت منتبه لهالأشياء أو إنه researches ولا CV. يعني كل اللي كنا نفكر فيه إنه نهتم للروتيشنز والدرجات وهالأمور. فالحين لما بقى شهرين على الام دي توني قمت استوعب ان السي في والريسيرشز، فهل هالشيء ياثر ولا اتس نوت تو ليت؟
شوفي تقدرين بالاخير الطب اتس ا كونتينوس لايف. الطب ما هو يوقف. على قولة اذكر امس قاعد اسولف مع احد من الدكاتره وحاليا استشاري، انا كنت وياه تعرفت عليه بالكورس بالاي تي ال اس لانه قاعد يسوي الابديت كان شاته. تعرفت عليه يقول لك الطب ما يوقف. You can start from now. هو ideally start early but you can start from now. You can start from now. It's okay. As long as you are planning to a specialty that you're interested in, a specialty you're interested in, start working on it from now. الروتيشن جريدز يفرق yes ان يعني some of the specialties بالانترفيو راح يركزون على الجريدز some of them not all of them. بس حطي بالك الجي بي is not important يعني بالنسبه لهم is not important، بس يستخدموها مرات كفاصل بين applicant to applicant. يستخدم كفاصل نهائي، يستخدم مرات، بس بالاخير جي بي is not important. ريسيرش يفضل تسوي ريسيرش in that specialty، يفضل يعني. انا ما اقول لك لا تسوي ريسيرش.
انا عندي واحد بس سويناه كجروب يعني بعد يير 3. يعني كان من ضمن الالكتيف ان احنا نروح، واخترنا موضوع اعتقد هو صار له يعني سنين، بس كان obesity in children. فكنا بالصيف نروح المستشفيات بالكويت وندور، وهذا يعني كان from A to Z للأمانة. بس هو كان واحد الريسيرش اللي سويته.
ما سمعت اخر بارت. ريسيرش سويتي obesity in children.
اي، ويعني اشتغلنا from A to Z يعني طول الصيف، وكنا احنا يعني ندور ونبحث from A to Z. كانت اول مرة نتعلم هالشيء، وكان الريسيرش الوحيد يعني.
ايه هذا تقدرين you can continue on it ترى يعني بالاخير يعني it will help لان obesity in children is a very hot issue بالنسبه للبيدياتريكس، لان شوي مثل تعرفين children شوي الحين children obesity و diabetes a very hot topic in Kuwait, especially in Kuwait. احنا الكويت يعتبر one of the most prominent obese countries worldwide along with the US and some of the countries.
صح، بس الفكرة كانت يعني ما كنت أنا مفكرة بهالأمور كلش يعني. حتى الستوري شفتها من عايشة، ف يعني قعدت أقول إن هذه آخر سنة وكنا نهتم بالروتيشنز، وين الريسيرشز وين الأشياء. فيعني الجانب الثاني كلش ما كنت مفكرة فيه.
شوفي انا اقول لك شغله، انا كنت بري كلينيكال ريسيرش ما سويت انا بري كلينيكال ريسيرش. مع ان في ناس يقول لك لا سوي بري كلينيكال ريسيرش. انا كان وصلت سنه خامسه ما كنت مسوي بري كلينيكال ريسيرش كلش. حتى ريسيرش لابز ما مداني اسويها حتى يعني، بس انا بلشت. بس عندك الكوميونتي ريسيرش ذاتس وان، هذا كوميونتي ريسيرش، ترى كوميونتي ميديسن ريسيرش هذا يعتبر وان ريسيرش يو ديد وان اوريدي. احنا اصلا compulsory for current universities to do at least one research، يعني at least to open your mind on how to do a research at least from zero. تقدر تحطينه، تقدر تتكلمين عنه، ما فيها شيء ترى، بالعكس
في
الحين.
اي جي احنا عندنا بير 3 بس.
هلا
نبلش بواحد بالبحرين، جامعة الخليج عندنا واحد بس.
اي بس هذا you can add it to the CV اذا تقدر انت if it's شوي community wise او public health you can add it to the CV and it helps ترى، يعني it helps a lot. يعني sometimes يعني اذكر يعني sometimes in the interview عفوا in the interview they'll ask you about it، لان بالاخير they're gonna spend 45 minutes to 1 hour talking with you regarding every single aspect of the CV or about you as a person. راح يقعدون بالتفصيل يتكلمون.
صحيح. دائما يقولوا لنا إذا داومنا بسنة الامتياز راح نعرف شنو نحب، بس من الحين أنا حاسة إن أكثر شيء أميل له صراحة فيديا روتيشن، بس ما أدري إذا هو نفس الشيء. بعدين قالوا اختلاف في إن روتيشن لما تداومين بالجامعة ولما تردين الكويت بسنة الامتياز ممكن يكون في اختلاف شوية.
وهو شوفي انت كميديكال سكول versus كولج طبعا يفرق، لانك انت متخرجه والستودنت شوي، بس انت الاكسبيرينس يتشابهون، لكن هو اللي يفرق انت وين مكانك. انت الحين انت كنت بالجامعه كستودنت، الحين لا رحتي الحين transition to a doctor. You're responsible now for managing this patient along with a team of doctors. You're gonna learn later on.
إيه.
كملي.
عندك فكرة دكتور، سوري إني قاطعتك، بس عندك فكرة إنه مثلا إذا أنا كنت حابة أكثر بيدي شنو الأشياء اللي المفروض أسويها؟
يا شلون ما فهمت سؤالك يعني، ما يخالف.
يعني أنا مو عارفة شلون بعدين إنه إذا بقيت أتخصص بيدي شنو الأشياء اللي المفروض أسويها وكذي، لأنه قاعد يقولون مرات وأنت ستودنت في أشياء يعني تفيد أو شيء كذي، ففي أشياء أنا أقدر أسويها إذا أنا يعني حابة بيدي أكثر من الحين، ولا لا ما راح تفرق حقي؟
تقدرين انت سويتي electives او observership in the special.
electives لا، لأن كانت حزة كورونا فمنعوا.
تقدرين تسوينه وانت بالانترن تقدرين تاخذين تسجلين الالكتيفز مالت الانترن از ان اكسبيرينس، يتسجل بالالكتيفز. احنا بالانترن يير الالكتيفات مالت تقدر تسجلينها كاز ان الكتيف اكسبيرينس، فعادي يتسجل. وobservership تقدرين تسجل observership، بس حط ببالك انه ماكو direct patient to patient interaction, but you can see the patient, you can write history, can do physical sometimes يعني if the doctors allow you to.
تمام، يعطيك العافية.
الله يعافيك حياتك الله.
We have 2 more questions, and I just wanted to ask if we could hopefully finish in 15 minutes, if that's okay,
Sure.
or less if
أنا
possible.
وصلني سؤال من مرام طيري. خليني أقول السؤال بس direct. Preference when it comes to studying medical school in the US versus UK or Ireland. I have much as in the UK. The system in one place necessarily better than the other. شوف الميد سكول ما راح يفرق. Never ever الميد سكول طبعا better than the other. full stop. ماكو سكول أحسن من الثاني. كلهم بالأخير يدرسون ميديكال ام دي، يعني كاهم انت لما تدشين بعدين بالانترفيو راح تنافسين بين دكاتره جامعه الكويت، دكاتره زملائنا في السعوديه، جامعه الملك سعود، جامعه الخليج، ايرلندا، يو كي، يونايتد ستيتس، ما يفرق. اللي يفرق وياهم انت your Canadian score, what you do in your CV for the med school for the last 7 years, who are you as a person بالبرسوناليتي مالتك لما تدش الانترفيو. This is things that important. No med school is better. اوكي يفرق، اوكي يعني شوي كلمه سكول يفرق انه من ناحيه exposure انه والله سبيشالتي exposure مالتي احسن من هناك. طبعا for me this is a minimal thing، يعني هذا ما راح يفرق وايد. هذا كنا نسمعه وايد من زملائنا احنا من RCSI والشباب اللي في تخصصات ثانيه. اللي يفرق انت كستودنت you need to build yourself. اوكي أتمنى جاوبت على سؤالك أنا مرام. سؤال ثاني من عبد الله. If I am thinking of a surgical specialty, for example, I have done community research so far, not surgical. Do I mention them? Yes, mention it. Community medicine تقدر تحط اي مكان عادي as long as انت الستدي مالك اذا published ولا لا. اذا مو published هم مو مشكله، ما فيها مشكله، تقدر بس راح يسالونك عنها. they'll talk about it. اوكي، سؤالنا اتمنى جاوبت على سؤالك عبد الله. سؤالنا من عبد الله القحطاني: متى افضل وقت تمتحن USMLE Step 2 once you finish your pre-clinical years؟ بس ما خالف اسالك سؤال، ما خالف الاخ عبد الله، انت جامعه الكويت ولا from another university؟
جامعة الكويت.
جامعه الكويت. افضل وقت نسويها fourth year after the end of fourth year which is basically pre-clinical end of pre-clinical years. يعني عنده فرق، يعني حتى اذا ما خاب ظني بالبحرين قبل ما تبشرون الكلينيكاليز that's the best time to do your USMLE. انت اوريدي تكون ماخذ المعلومات كلها كامله الساينسز و you can finish it at the end of fourth year. You can apply, you can use step 1. step 2 عقب التخرج او during intern year is excellent. الحين اصلا this year I think if I'm not mistaken is the final opportunity so you can do USMLE step 2 قبل step 1. بعدين السنه الجايه كان اذا ما خاب ظني you do step 1 compulsory قبل ما تسوي step 2 اذا ما خاب ظني. هذا لان كنا نسمع من زملائنا ودكتور بال who graduated from US residency.
I have a question about the electives.
Yeah, تفضلي.
Okay, يعني how do I approach it? Like, is it something direct between me and the hospital that I choose? Like, especially outside Kuwait. I'm currently a preclinical student, and like, is there a preferred period, like after preclinical years, or yeah, that's.
هو شوفي مشكلة preclinical years إن they don't give them electives, but you can do something called an إذا ماني خاب ظني إحنا بالكويت كومسا تسوي opportunities annual is called FMSA electives. This is an excellent opportunity. مو شرط تسوينه بكندا. You can do it in a countries approved by FMSA. Brazil, Belgium, these Belgium, any European countries, Poland. عندنا زملائنا راحوا بولندا، راحوا ألمانيا. UK كان في opportunities إذا ما خاب ظني فرانس، باريس، ما خاب ظني برشلونة. دول الخليج عندنا كانوا يسوون الكتيفات. كندا ويونايتد ستيتس في مواقع، يعني كندا I logged in a website called the IFMC portal. I'll write it down if I'm not mistaken. بس خليني اكتبها انا بالchat. It's called IFMC portal. This is a website for the Canadian electives. Usually it's done for clinical years. احنا usually clinical years we do it electives in Canada using this website. You have to open an account and you apply. You have to attach certain documents, immunization certificate, etc. In Kuwait, you can approach it. You can approach the faculty. The faculty عندنا في undergraduate. You can, or any university, you can approach the faculty undergraduate. And if I want to do an elective, how do I tell you? They tell you the process in details. This is how I did my observership in McGill. And McGill didn't offer me an elective because it was only applicable for Canadians or anyone who's permanent resident in Canada. So I told them I want to do an elective. They told me no electives, but however, you can do an observership. An observership can contact the doctor directly or the hospital. So I want to, let's say, do an observership with trauma. I spoke to the doctor. He told me just contact my secretary and she'll send you the details and do the paperwork. And once they review the application, everything, they approve it, then you can arrange for your travel arrangements and housing and etc. Yeah. And this is how you do the process. Hopefully that answers your questions.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Khaled. That was really useful, and I hope everyone found it useful as well.
Thank you, Daria.
And I think we'll just be ending right there if no one else has any questions.
I don't think, I think this is the end of the questions.
All right. So I think we can just end the room now. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you everyone for attending. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. These are my accounts on Twitter and Instagram. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer.